Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Recently, Chinese President Xi Jinping is visiting Vietnam at the invitation of the Vietnamese president. Chinese state media described the visit as a visit to the homes of relatives and neighbors, which is true. Historically, Vietnam, especially northern Vietnam, has been a part of China for more than 1,000 years, from the time Qin Shi Huang pioneered South Vietnam until the Sui and Tang dynasties. At that time, people in Vietnam undoubtedly considered themselves Chinese. It was not until the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period that China was divided and Vietnam began to break away from Chinese rule. The Ming dynasty briefly regained Vietnam, but in the end, because Vietnam had been independent for a long time, it formed its own national consciousness. Coupled with some bad operations of the Ming dynasty government, Vietnam broke away from the rule of the Central Plains dynasty not long after. The cultural customs of Vietnam are very similar to those of China. They can be almost identical, including various traditional festivals, such as Spring Festival, Dragon Boat Festival, etc. By the way, Vietnam also has 12 zodiac signs. The difference is that among their 12 zodiac signs, there is no year of the rabbit, but there is the year of the cat. One theory is that rice is an important part of Vietnamese agriculture. Because there are many threats of rats in the fields, the Vietnamese changed the year of the rabbit to the year of the cat. Another theory is that the year of the rabbit was called the year of Mao in ancient times. The pronunciation of Mao in Vietnamese is similar to that of cat, which is why the year of the rabbit became the year of the cat. I personally prefer the second explanation. In ancient times, Vietnam, like Korea, used Chinese characters as its official text. In fact, the writing system currently used in Vietnam is based on the pinyin scheme designed by French missionary Lord. After Vietnam was colonized by France in the 18th century, France promoted this writing in southern Vietnam and later spread throughout Vietnam. After Ho Chi Minh declared Vietnam's independence and established the Democratic Republic of Vietnam in 1945, he randomly announced the policy of adopting Vietnamese and Vietnamese Ramaji as the official language. China also played an important role in Vietnam's fight against colonial rule and its struggle for national independence in modern times. If China hadn't warned the United States not to cross the 17th parallel, and if it hadn't been for China's steady flow of weapons, food and other material aid, if it weren't for the military advisors sent by China and the Air Force sent by China to assist in the operation, with the powerful force of the United States, how could it lose to Vietnam? This is why the Vietnam War has always made America feel so bad. I believe that no country can have such a huge impact on Vietnam like China. Regardless of cultural commonality, or even at the genetic level, the Kin people in northern Vietnam are obviously influenced by a lot of Han genes. This is the result of a long history. Therefore, it can be said that Vietnam has a love-hate relationship with China. Love is because of the same culture and close blood relationship, hate, because it is necessary to hate China in order to maintain the self-national consciousness of one's own nation. This is why Vietnamese textbooks refer to the more than 1,000 years of Chinese rule as the Northern Period. At the same time, they vigorously publicized some local rebellions against the Central Dynasty. These rebellions were just like the rebellions in the ancient Chinese mainland. They were conflicts between the rulers and their people, not national conflicts. However, in order to maintain and highlight the self-awareness of the Vietnamese nation, the Vietnamese government must shape these resistance leaders into heroes of its own nation. In fact, the situation in Vietnam is very similar to that in South Korea. It's just that South Korea's national character is more flamboyant, and South Korea developed earlier than China, which has created the extremely conceited character of Koreans in the face of China. At the same time, in order to cover up their inherent inferiority, they continue to plagiarize ancient Chinese culture. Today, South Korea, under the leadership of the Yoon Suk-yeol government, has moved toward the United States and abandoned its original neutral position between China and the United States. He even went so far as to lick the butt of the feuding Japanese in order to please his American father. It is really strange that the Koreans could elect such a president. Because of this, Vietnam's role and status have become more prominent. Vietnam's leaders are not as stupid as South Korea's Yin Xia, and they completely fall in love with the United States. Vietnam's diplomacy is quite flexible and remains neutral between China and the United States. This not only improves its strategic position, but also benefits from both sides. By building a good relationship with China, we can better integrate into China's industrial chain and undertake more of China's overseas production capacity while upgrading China's industrial chain. Having a good relationship with the United States can bring in more European, American, Japanese, and Korean capital, and at the same time, it can also invisibly increase the bargaining chip against China. For now, China must also have a good relationship with Vietnam. In China's layout, in the Northeast Asia region, Japan and South Korea have completely moved towards the United States, and it is no longer feasible to break the situation in the Northeast. Therefore, the direction of ASEAN becomes even more important. Most countries in ASEAN and Southeast Asia are relatively close to China. Except for the Philippines, an ally of the United States, now the Philippines is also instigated by the United States. The issue of Scarborough Shoal is going up and down. Yesterday, the Chinese government's Coast Guard also detained 3 related Philippine ships. This year, the Philippines has released 4 more military bases for the use of the U.S. military. These bases usually pose a serious threat to China's national security. Not to mention wartime, for example, when China unifies Taiwan by force or conflicts with the United States in the South China Sea. The United States visited Vietnam in September this year and upgraded its relationship with Vietnam to a comprehensive strategic partnership, elevating its relationship with China to the same level. The United States has also announced that it will help Vietnam get rid of its dependence on Russian-made weapons. We all know that exporting weapons from one country to another means that the trust in the relationship between the two countries has reached a relatively high level. For China, it is necessary to ensure that Vietnam does not fall to the United States. If Vietnam falls to the United States, it will be a geopolitical disaster for China. Xi Jinping's visit to Vietnam this time is to deepen the comradeship and brotherhood between China and Vietnam and deeply embed Vietnam's economy into China's economic cycle. This is the so-called China-Vietnam community with a shared future. As for the South China Sea island disputes with Vietnam, they can be put aside for the time being in the context of competition between China and the United States. I hope future generations will have enough wisdom to solve it. Thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Thanks.